I would be remiss if I didn't correct you on a couple of things. Number one, my wife is definitely not a housewife. She would kill me if I didn't correct you on that. But she is back in town and she works doing mediations and arbitrations with another former judge, Gene Porter. And then secondly, I'm up for election next year because I was appointed to the position I'm in now, so I have to run for election to the office. Well, it's a pleasure to be here. I wasn't sure what the group would be made of when I walked in the room. I knew I'd be amongst an elite group, and I'm right. So it's a pleasure to be here, Joe. Thank you for asking me to talk. I have a few general comments. I've got a PowerPoint, and then the most fun part of the afternoon is I open it up for general questions, and I encourage questions. You know, it's not often that I follow a comedian who's dressed as a priest. And I do appreciate that, I want to acknowledge Peter Mayhew. Peter, it's a privilege to meet you. We're here honoring your father. This is a very nice afternoon event for me to be at. I'd like to recognize Owen Nitz. Owen, my wife Jackie worked for you almost 30 years ago.
Ain't it the truth?
She tells me you were the hardest guy to work for in her career.
Well, I've changed my
And also Norm Jenkins. Norm's here, an old good friend of mine, and you know, Norm used to open up the sporting house, and I've seen Norm naked many, many times, but I won't tell you anything more about that. Dean Hamilton, nice to see you. Looking forward to having you as our dean. And my daughter, Rebecca Wolfson, is starting the Boyd Law School in about 2 weeks. Give her help, Dean. Governor List, pleasure to see you here. Thank you.
Thank you, Steve.
And then the Republican Party elite is here. I mean, everybody stood up. I'm president of this. I'm the former that from the Republican Party. Well, in the interest of full disclosure, I'm a Democrat. But my wife's a Republican, so we have one of those split marriages. So it really is nice to be here. Let me talk to you a few minutes about the district attorney's office. A little bit about me first. I'll try not to stand in front of you. I'm going to kind of walk around a little. Like Joe said, I was born in Los Angeles. I moved to Las Vegas after law school 33 years ago this month. I started my career in the DA's office, was there about 5 years. I then went to the U.S. Attorney's Office. I was a federal prosecutor for almost 2 years. And then Justice Mark Gibbons lured me out of the government, and I worked with him in his law firm for about 3 years. And then I was in the private practice of law for about 25 years until appointed by the Clark County Commissioners to serve as your district attorney 17 months ago. I was on the city council for about 8 years. My current term, which I am finishing my predecessor's term, ends next year, and I am up for election next year. I am married to Judge Jackie Glass, and we have 2 beautiful grown daughters. Enough about me. Getting the job. A very unique way to become the district attorney. Most people become the district attorney after being elected to office. But in this situation, my predecessor resigned. The law says that the county commission had to appoint a successor. So I had the very unenviable job of being interviewed for 4 hours by the county commission on live television. I was asked multiple questions by all 7 members of the county commission, seated between 2 other gentlemen who also wanted the job. It was in a very public setting, and now there is a public record of everything I said during that interview. So everybody has all my remarks and all my comments that they can use against me in the future. Okay, let's see how this is working. What does the DA do? Well, somebody asked me if I am the lead or the top law enforcement officer in Clark County. I don't call myself that. I call myself the lead prosecutor. I now have about 750 employees, about 170, this slide is wrong, about 170 are lawyers How many lawyers are in the room? About 7 or 8? Raise your hands. Oh, more than that. Lawyers don't have egos, do they? And I've got 170 I have to supervise. They are made up of 4 divisions: the criminal division, civil, family support, and then the juvenile division. What is the DA's role in the justice system? Well, law enforcement makes an arrest, the case is submitted to the DA and screened. We determine if cases are going to be prosecuted. Police officers, highway patrolmen, they don't determine whether a person is prosecuted. They make the arrest, but it's the district attorney that makes the decision whether to prosecute. If it's approved, it is assigned to a deputy DA, and most cases are plea bargain, some go to a jury trial. The criminal division. This is the division that most people think about when they think about the district attorney's office. We file about 60,000 charges in a single year. We're organized into general litigation teams and specialty teams, and you can read here what our specialty teams include. Our major violators unit. This is a team of about 9 lawyers that do all of the very serious, high-profile, primarily murder cases, but not always murder cases. For example, the Desai case that just went to trial in the last couple of months. That was handled by 2 of my major violator prosecutors. We have a special victims unit, which consists of sexual assault cases. Now, 30 years ago, when I was in the DA's office, we had 1 specialty team and 1 specialty prosecutor, and that was Mel Harmon. Anybody know or ever heard of Mel Harmon? Sure, a few of the older children know who I'm talking about. Mel Harmon was the major violator prosecutor. He did all the big cases. Well, that was 30 years ago when our office consisted of about 40 lawyers. Now, with 101 lawyers just in criminal, we have to specialize. So we've divided up into specialty teams. We have a team that does nothing but gun cases, a team that does domestic violence cases, vehicular crimes. We have a bad check team, and then other specialty teams. Our civil division, this is the boring stuff. A lot of people don't know, but I have about 20 lawyers that work in my civil division, and they handle all sorts of cases involving civil litigation. A juvenile division, this is the team that's down off of Pecos and Bonanza. They're divided into 2 separate divisions, the delinquency and child welfare divisions. The delinquency team, which is about 12 lawyers, prosecute juveniles. If you're 16 and you commit a crime, you're brought into the juvenile court system. And our juvenile division handles this, about 6,000 cases a year. We have a child welfare team. This team consists of lawyers that handle the abuse and neglect cases. If a parent or a guardian is abusive or neglectful of a child, but it doesn't necessarily rise to a criminal case, a petition is filed, and the goal is the safe and timely permanency for children. Oftentimes the children are removed from the home temporarily with the goal towards placing the child either back into the family or sometimes in a foster home. Now here's a division that most people don't even know exists in the DA's office. This is my family support division, which is located in a whole different facility on East Flamingo. Now I told you my office has about 750 employees. About 320 are in the family support division alone. 20 lawyers and 300 staffers. What do? We collect money on behalf of children in Clark County. Now what does that mean? If a man and woman have children and end up getting a divorce and can afford lawyers, they go into family court and they have a judge determine custody, support, and visitation. But what happens if people can't afford a lawyer? but they need child support. They go to the Family Support Division to obtain orders for child support, and oftentimes the non-custodial parent doesn't pay. Now, I don't like using the term deadbeat dads. That's the term that is most often used, because a lot of times, especially in times of recession, the non-custodial parent loses his job. He'd like to pay child support, but he just can't. Well, that's when the DA's office will step in to enforce child support orders. And last year alone, think about it, in 2012, our office collected more than $125 million on behalf of children in Clark County. About 90% of that money actually went to the children and the custodial parent. We just received, in the last 60 days, a national award for the most improved child support program in the country. And I have great, great lawyers that work down there in family support, and staff people too, that get all the credit for this award. Something that I'm very proud of is that we are now involved in the community. We have what we call an ambassador program that has been developed to get the deputy DAs and staff members out in the community to volunteer, educate, and connect with residents. And most of our work is focused on students in the schools. We participate in programs called Law Day, Nevada Reading Week, Project Real. We coach high school mock trial teams, and then we participate in career days. Now, before I took office, the DA's office did a little of this, but I am a big believer in community involvement. It is now part of the criteria for lawyers to be promoted. I want my lawyers to be involved in the community, and if you want to be promoted, in addition to your normal lawyer duties, I want you out in the community helping the community. Thank you. I could spend another hour talking about the things we do. We like to reach out and give back as a team. Here's some fun pictures. We do walks in malls. I hate that picture, Audrey, that Wolfson's walkers. I hate that. We got to remove that next time. We participated in a veteran stand down. I spoke to the Nevada League of Women Voters. We have a 5K run. We do a bunch of stuff out in the community. Sometimes we have even more fun. I did a radio interview with a very famous person who you can see in that top right. His name's Joe Brown. I'm very excited that 2 weeks from Friday, in about 15 or 16 days, I'm going to throw out the first pitch at a Las Vegas 51s ball game. I am scared to death. Because I worked with a guy a few years ago by the name of Oscar Goodman. Did any of you see him throughout the first pitch? He was terrible. And you know, my goal, I'm buying a real Major League Baseball. I'm going to practice. My goal is to throw it over that catcher's head. We have picnics. We have holiday parties. At one of the holiday parties, we actually had a mechanical bull, and we raised money for a local charity. We had a hot dog eating contest. Let me tell you about this. One of our lawyers became gravely ill about 12 months ago. She had to leave the DA's office because of cancer. And she had a separation period before the insurance kicked in, and she needed money. So the district attorney's office, through various events, raised money, including a hot dog eating contest. Now, some of you might say, what are the DAs doing having a hot dog eating contest? Well, this was 2 hours over a lunch period up in the DA's office. In 2 hours, we raised $1,300 for Gwendolyn, and in about 2 months, we raised $7,000 for this DA employee. So we have fun, but we do it for a good purpose. Nancy Becker, former Nevada Supreme Court justice, had a going away party. That's her in the bottom right, dressed as one of the Star Trek characters. Okay, hot topics. These are things that most people like to hear me talk about, so let's talk about a few of them. The coroner's inquest is out. The police fatality review process is in. The coroner's inquest was a public hearing that was in existence for about 40 years. When somebody died as the result of the use of force by a police officer, there was an inquest. And it worked fairly well for a long time, but then we had a couple of very controversial cases. The Trevon Cole case, this was a young African American that was shot in the back during a very poorly executed search warrant. And then we had the Eric Scott case at our Costco out in Summerlin. Well, the community rose up and said, wait a minute, something's wrong. Let's look at our coroner's inquest. And our county commissioners, after about a year and a half, came up with a new process. This is something I could talk about for an hour. We don't have that much time. During this period of time, though, because we weren't having any coroner's inquest hearings, 20 cases backed up. When I took office 17 months ago, there were 20 cases, fatalities, people that were shot, primarily shot, by police officers that were not having hearings. So the family of the decedent, the family of the police officers, and even our community weren't getting any information about what happened. What I decided to do was issue written decisions. And this is what most large district attorneys' offices in this country do. We weren't doing it before. So I was filling a void, and I have now issued about 25 written decisions regarding the officer-involved shootings. The police fatality review process is ongoing. We're actually having our 4th PFR on August 14th. This is when the lead detective who investigated the officer-involved use of force fatality will appear in the county commission chambers and participate in a hearing regarding the circumstances of the death of one of our citizens. We actually have a newer policy as well. Not only is the district attorney's office going to issue written decisions involving fatalities, but we're following the lead that the Department of Justice is recommending, and we're going to be issuing written decisions anytime a police officer discharges his firearm and the bullet strikes one of our citizens. Our animal cruelty awareness campaign. This is something we started a couple of months ago because one of my deputies came to me and said, we are not prosecuting enough persons who are either intentionally or through neglect abusing animals. What I'm primarily talking about is during the summer months. It's amazing how many people leave their animals in backyards unattended, no water, no food, and it only takes a couple of hours for that animal to die. So we have started an awareness campaign, and we are prosecuting people that are neglectful to their animals. Strip shooter case. That's the tagline that everybody has attached. No, it's not a strip joint. Is that what you thought I was going to talk about? In all seriousness, this is the case where Mr. Harris is accused about 90 days ago or so of getting involved in a shootout on the Strip where he fired his gun from his moving vehicle into the moving vehicle of another car, killing that driver, which caused that driver to then crash into the taxi cab, killing both the taxi cab driver and his customer. 3 people died. Mr. Harris is facing the death penalty. That case is scheduled for trial in December. Got a lot of attention. not only nationally, but internationally, because the crime occurred Flamingo and Las Vegas Boulevard right on our strip. Finally, the apple picker case. Anybody have any idea what the apple picker case is? The apple picker case is a tag that has been attached to a type of crime that is occurring in this country involving the theft of Apple products. iPhone, iPad, and any other Apple product. And we have a case where two relatively young men decided to try and strong arm away from a kid that was walking on the street his iPad. It resulted in a struggle and they ran him over and killed him. So they're calling these kinds of cases because he had an Apple iPad, an Apple picker case. Well, that's an interesting slide. Wow, look at that. Okay, well, thank you very much. That's just kind of a quick overview of the district attorney's office and some of the things we do. I love entertaining questions if any of you have questions. Yes, sir, Peter.
Steve, in the recent police shooting where the review board recommended termination of the officer, and the officer was terminated, and then Sheriff Gillespie reinstated the officer and gave the officer 1 week off. I guess my question is, are those the only two disciplinary actions the police department or the sheriff's metro can take? Either terminate an officer for a questionable shooting or give him a week off? It seems like there's a vast...
There's a big difference between termination and a week off. You'd think maybe they'd have a 30-day suspension.
And the follow-up to that question is in your position, do you have any authority to involve yourself in that kind of a situation?
Let me answer the second question first. Do I have authority to enter into that kind of situation? The answer is no. These are the internal workings of another public agency, Metro. Metro has their own rules governed by, a lot of times, by collective bargaining agreements or other laws, and this is a creation of the Las Vegas Metropolitan Police Department. We created this use of force board, which now includes civilian members. They actually go out to scenes, and the civilian board members participate in briefings, etc. But this is, like I said, it's the internal workings of Metro. My office has nothing to do with it. As far as whether or not there are other kinds of punishment in between a 1 week suspension and termination, I don't know. I'm being honest with you. You ask me that at the table, I'll tell you what, you give me your card, I'll get the answer for you and call you with the answer. Okay? Anybody else? Come on, Owen. Don't let me off so easy. Dean Hamilton?
I need a rest.
So there is a killing or a serious shooting from a police officer. Does your staff investigate to see whether or not that was a legal or an illegal act?
Yes. The
I'm not
answer
talking
is,
about just disciplinary, but I'm talking about a criminal act.
and let's separate the two. There's the administrative part that Metro conducts on their own. They review the actions of one of their employees. That's the administrative. My office is tasked with reviewing any potential criminal case. And I will tell you that any time a police officer uses force and it results in a fatality, that file is submitted to my office for criminal review. Yes. Next.
Could you go through a little bit kind of this distinction between criminal court and drug court and where how cases are defined? I bring this up because on Channel 3, Jim Rogers had this interview with this guy from West Care in the last week. It was a very interesting interview. I think they have it on the website. But you know, they talk about what larger percentage of cases that case your office
Sends over.
are drug related.
Yeah. Well, probably 70% of all crime is connected in some way to drugs or alcohol. whether it be illegal drugs or prescription drugs or alcohol. Probably 70% of crime has something to do with that. But to answer your more precise question, drug court is a specialty court because what we realized over time, and Judge Jack Lehman was the first drug court judge, was we needed a diversionary program. We don't want to necessarily prosecute everybody. We want to give some people a chance to be rehabilitated. Let's cure them. So we created a drug court. And what that does is it gives people who are charged with crimes an opportunity to participate in a program. It can be a 1-year program, it can be a 3-year program. And if they successfully complete the program, number one, theoretically, they're sober. Their problem has been fixed. Number two, they get some sort of concession on their criminal case. Sometimes the case is dismissed, or sometimes it's lessened to a minor offense. Very successful program. Judge Linda Bell is now our specialty court judge. She's in charge of drug court, DUI court. We now have a veterans court, which she oversees as well.
Now, just a quick follow-up. You know, the guy from West Care made it sound as if these criminals related to drugs, that it takes them, he used a number like it takes them 17 times before the person licks the bottle. It made it sound like these people are just coming back through your court.
Well, I would tell you that...
I'm just asking for clarification.
Yeah, I would tell you that not everybody that enters any program, whether it be drug court or any rehabilitative program, becomes clean the first time and life is good. These are oftentimes addicts. These are oftentimes people that have other sicknesses or illnesses. And yes, drug court is a court of second and third chance. But also our judges are not afraid to incarcerate people. I mean, you have to have a hammer. If there's no hammer, if there's no threat of a consequence, how are these people going to want to complete the program? So yes, sometimes people come through or are given second, third, and fourth chances. That's up to the discretion of the judge.
What are your thoughts with regard to the legislation concerning marijuana and a more lenient attitude towards marijuana possession?
Well, tomorrow I'm sitting down with Sheriff Gillespie. We're having our second meeting to discuss how is law enforcement going to deal with the new legislation regarding medical marijuana dispensaries. We are now a state which has authorized the creation of places where people with medical marijuana cards can go purchase marijuana. And starting next April, Clark County has been authorized to open 40 medical marijuana dispensaries. You have to have a medical marijuana card issued by a licensed doctor. And the bill, I believe, which created, and this is Tick Seaverbloom's bill, and I will commend him, he did a good job, is 46 pages, I believe. Now, a lot of laws, lawyers, agree with me, please, a lot of laws are 1 page, 2 page, a paragraph. This bill is 46 pages. That's how complicated it is regarding the establishment of dispensaries. How are we going to regulate them? So I'm meeting with the sheriff tomorrow to begin and continue a discussion about what happens about the lawbreakers. Then there's the whole other aspect of the legalization of marijuana. It is still a felony crime in Nevada to possess more than an ounce of marijuana. It's a misdemeanor to have less than an ounce of marijuana. It's a crime. Well, there are some states that are totally legalizing marijuana. You don't have to have a medical marijuana card. It's legal. And there was an effort to do that in Nevada, and there's going to be a continuing effort. And my prediction is one day we are going to be one of those states that legalizes marijuana.
Yes, can you take that a little bit further? I was hearing on the news that Washington State is having some issues with a perceived revenue that they were going to get from the legalization of marijuana and how to track that. And now people are going a little bit, they're getting medical marijuana prescriptions versus buying from the dispensaries and creating revenue for the state.
Well, our law is modeled after both Colorado and Washington and also Arizona. I guess we're going to have to wait and see, because part of the goal is to raise revenue and to have this revenue go to, I believe, the school district, if I'm remembering correctly. Somebody's shaking their head, so I must. Well, you're looking like a lot smarter than me. One of the things we're concerned about is organized crime. Not the traditional organized crime, because they don't exist anymore, but the new organized crime. The kinds of folks that see an opportunity and want to come in and open up a dispensary. So as far as the revenue, I guess we're just going to have to wait and see. Governor?
Do you support the proposition that the county commission should approve the sheriff's increase of 0.15% of the sales tax for the
Am I in favor of the more cops ordinance? Is that what you're asking?
Yep.
The answer is yes. I am in favor because I am in favor of public safety. As a city councilman, which I was for 8 years, and now as the district attorney, I do town halls. And we've done citizen surveys over the years, especially in the last 6 or 8 years during the recession. We wanted to know what were the most important issues to our constituents. The #1 thing across the board was public safety. That's what people care about the most. If somebody's breaking into your home, you want to be able to call 911 and have a police officer there within a reasonable period of time. If you're at home and your loved one grabs his chest and starts going into cardiac arrest, you want to be able to call 911 and have a first responder there in less than 5 minutes. So the public has consistently said we're willing to pay for the type of public security and police force we need. The more cops ordinance is controversial, and I could talk for an hour about this, because does it really mean more cops, or does it mean replacing vacancies that haven't been filled? Is the money going to be used to hire more cops, or to pay for the salaries of current cops?
Either way, it's going to supplement the sheriff's budget.
It's going to supplement the sheriff's budget. I believe we have a great sheriff, I do. I think he means well, I think he's doing a good job. So yes, I support the More Cops initiative. JD?
The driver identification card issue, is that a conflict with other laws, perhaps?
You talking about from the immigration standpoint? Oh, that is such a broad question, JD. I'm not sure
How
exactly.
do you issue a permit to someone, to anybody that's committing a crime just by accepting it, so to speak?
Well, I don't know that that's true. I don't know that they're committing a crime by accepting it. In other words, if they're here illegally, but our society has already accepted their existence in this country illegally. You know, this could be debated back and forth. There's issues on both sides. Let's put up walls on the borders and keep everybody out. I mean, I hear it like you hear it. But I pose this to you. If you get into a car accident with somebody who's not a citizen of the United States, and they don't have identification on them, and they don't have insurance, would you rather be in that spot or get into a car accident with a person who's here illegally but has a citizen card and has purchased insurance? That's the pro in the ID card. But I see the issue both ways. Did I answer that like a true politician?
Very good.
Everybody's politician. Or nobody's, one of the two.
Speaking of political, which job is harder, city council or DA?
Oh, gosh. You know, I get asked all the time, which one did I like most, and do you miss the city council? I loved being a city councilman. That was a great job. Working with Oscar Goodman and my colleagues, that was a lot of fun. And we did some good work too, all of the stuff downtown, but I have a real job. When I was a city councilman, that was part-time, and I got to practice law. This is a real job. This is an important job. I'm very, very fortunate, and I'm very humbled to be the Clark County District Attorney because I recognize how important it is. Let me give you an example. I didn't include and are we running out of time, Joe? Am I going too long?
No, go on.
Let me give you an example. I did not include a slide about the issue of death penalty, which I could put 20 slides on. We have the death penalty in the state of Nevada, and it's been very controversial because of the cost involved, etc. More citizens than not favor the death penalty. Even though we're not killing anybody, they're still in favor of having the death penalty. It's the district attorney's decision whether or not to file to seek the death penalty. If we don't file, then a jury is not given the option at sentencing in returning the death penalty. It's either life in prison with or without parole. So if we don't file the notice, the jury doesn't have the choice. That decision comes before a committee of lawyers. I have 10 of my best lawyers that do murder and death penalty cases convene about every 2 weeks to decide whether or not to seek the death penalty on a given case. Even though I assemble 10 people, and we spend about an hour or two on every case, and I go around the room, Cullinane, and I say, Cullinane, what's your opinion on this case? Or Owen, what's your opinion on this case? The buck stops here. Even though I have a committee, I'm the committee, you know what I mean? Because I'm the district attorney. That is a decision that I take extremely seriously. So when you ask me what's the difference between a city council job where I'll go to an opening of a car wash, yeah, it's kind of fun, you know, new car wash and stuff, versus deciding whether or not to file the notice of intent to seek the death penalty. That's kind of a, I love my job. I'm very lucky to have it.
No,
Sure.
Back to the more police issue. You mentioned the right of a citizen to have the ability to call a police officer. What about the responsibility of the citizen to protect himself? And to, you know, we want to have government take care of everything. But, you know, it's impossible. We can't afford to do that. So what about, how does DA look at us protecting ourselves?
Well, whether you're a police officer or Jack Finn in his own home, you have the right to defend yourself. And we have a no retreat rule in the state of Nevada. What that means is that if you are confronted with the threat of serious injury or death, and you reasonably believe you or anybody else that's in your area are threatened with serious injury or death, and you're not the initial aggressor, you have the right to use deadly force. You don't have to retreat. Some states have the retreat rule, where you gotta walk away. We do not have that. We have the no retreat rule. So the simple answer to your question is, if you are at home and somebody is breaking into your home, and the facts and circumstance of every case are different, so I'm just talking generally, and you reasonably fear that you are facing serious bodily injury or death, you can use deadly force. And it happens a couple times a year. You read about the guy at home, somebody's breaking in, shoots and kills him. We had one out in Summerlin about a year ago, and the district attorney's office did not file charges against that man.
So that leads to the question I'm sure you've been asked dozens of times. What did you think of the Trayvon Martin decision.
You think I'm going to answer that? I'm not going near that one. That's
Are
my
you up
answer.
for, are you running for office?
Sir, I'll tell you privately when.
People who are incarcerated for many years, they have the death penalty. Why would a person be incarcerated for 20 years, say, waiting for the death penalty to occur, but never does?
In other words, why does it take so long? Well, it's called the United States Constitution and due process and the rights that we all have as people that live in this country. It's called an appellate process, and it's called a defense lawyer. And, you know, I believe in a process that maybe takes 5 or 10 years, because before we execute somebody, don't we want to be really sure that he did it, he or she did it, and that we've, you know, looked at every appellate avenue? But you're right, it shouldn't be 20 and 25 years, because it's costing you and I money. It's the appellate process, and it's the courts that overturn and then send back for new trials. My office just convicted a man by the name of Richard Haberstraw. He was first prosecuted for murder 25 years ago. And he was convicted, first-degree death, went up to the Supreme Court, they reversed it. Sent it down, he was convicted again, reversed a second time. And my office was tasked with trying this man for the third time, just 3 months ago. And you know what? I took into consideration the cost involved. Here we go again, the third time. And I directed my prosecutors to call in the parents of the young girl that was brutally killed. They live in Pahrump. And my prosecutors drove out to Pahrump to meet with the parents of, I think her name is Debbie Katowski, if I'm remembering correctly. Because I wanted input from these folks. You know, how do you feel? Should we try again? Do you want to come in and testify 25 years later? And they said, absolutely. This man brutally murdered our daughter. So we took into consideration the family. We tried him again. He was convicted, and a jury returned the death verdict to him. Hopefully this time it'll stand up on appeal. Sir.
You brought up the option of prefer to be hit by somebody who is an illegal alien but has a driver's license and has insurance. There are several categories of people who fall into illegal status in this country, but if you have a person who has made a deliberate decision to come into a country and violating the laws of the country in the process, why are they all of a sudden going to buy insurance? I think their mindset is, no, the laws don't matter. You're not throwing me out, so you obviously don't care about those laws. I'm going to give you insurance money? Why? Particularly if I don't have anything to be sued for.
In other words, your question is, how many of these folks are really going to get those cards and buy insurance?
For what?
Great question.
I wouldn't.
Great question. And I asked the same question.
I would like to say something, if I may, and I apologize, but I'm an immigrant. I was born in Israel. I came to America, and I have a lot of, unfortunately, again, I know a lot of people are illegally here, and they would love to get insurance. They would love to have the path for immigration. This is a different story, but definitely they want to get health, they want to get insurance, because if they get into trouble, they don't want to lose their home and everything they've ever built. So I'm not discussing the immigration law, but in regards to being a lawful citizen, most of them are really good citizens. They pay taxes, they want to be part of the community, and they do want to get insurance. So that's not the issue, but they don't want to get insurance. They want to be, against our rules. They want to be part of the rules.
And I agree with you, and this is a discussion which we could spend 2 hours on, at least. There are people with different views on this issue. Sir.
Can you explain how and when you use the grand jury?
Yes. We have 2 state grand juries, a Tuesday grand jury and a Thursday grand jury. And I would say 99% of the time, they receive cases from the DA's office with proposed indictments. And 99% of the time, they return an indictment. Your question is, what kinds of cases do we take to a grand jury? Cases that we want to move through the system quicker. The strip shooter case. If we went to a preliminary hearing, which is the alternative to a grand jury, that preliminary hearing could take 2 weeks with defense lawyers and witnesses, cross-examination. We don't want that case to take 2 weeks for a preliminary hearing. We want to get that case up to the trial court, set for a trial quick. That's one example. Second example, what if we have children as witnesses? We don't want the children to be subjected to cross-examination at this early stage. We want to get the case up into district court quickly. Third example, a lot of our drug cases where we want quick indictments, get big drug dealers into court quickly. We take a lot of drug cases to grand jury. So those are 3 examples.
Why do you ever want the long process?
We don't want the long process.
Why don't you have a third grand jury?
Yeah, money. You know, a grand jury is a great tool for a prosecutor because it allows us to take cases in, no defense lawyer, no cross-examination. We get the cases moved to district court quickly. We have 2 grand juries that sit one Tuesday and one Thursday for a whole year. Grand juries cost money. There's also another school of thought that a prosecutor could abuse a grand jury. Take the wrong kinds of cases to a grand jury or take too many. So there's that. How about one?
Yeah, what's the prevalence of gang-related crime in Las Vegas?
Prevalence?
Is there a
Huge.
percentage? Is it an issue?
Huge.
Huge.
I don't know if you saw on the slide, we have a gang unit, which is a team of 3 lawyers that do nothing but gang cases. I think the latest number I heard is we have about 8,000 active gang members in Las Vegas. And when I say in Las Vegas, they're in every community in this town. We have gang members in Summerlin, Henderson, probably within just a couple of miles of where we're sitting right now. It's a huge problem in any major city. Our police departments have gang teams. Our police, our prosecutors have specialized teams with their focus just on the gang problem. Okay, well, thank you so much. I really appreciate it.